Now, Bundesliga matchday 9 has happened, so let's talk about it. To open the match day, it was Borussia Dortmund versus Augsburg in Augsburg. And I think it's worth noting that in last week it was the DFB Pokal. So midweek, Dortmund had gone extra time and penalties at Eintracht Frankfurt. And they were already playing on Friday again. They saw out the win, they won 1-0. But the goal really summed up Augsburg at the moment because it bounced off between two Augsburg defenders before landing in a pass of Guirassy, who scored his first goal in quite a while for his standard. And that's how Dortmund won the game. It was, considering Dortmund had gone to penalties with Frankfurt in midweek, it was quite a strong performance from them. But it was also a bit of a grind because Augsburg had been quite bad up until now. But this was a much better performance from them. So Dortmund really needed to grind this result out. And they managed to do it. Joe Bellingham, there's obviously been a lot of talk about him in recent weeks. There was a good moment in this match where he did lose the ball just outside the Dortmund box, but then he was able to recover and make what was potentially a goal-saving block, slide tackle, to potentially stop Augsburg from scoring. There was another good battle between Kingsley Matsima and Guirassy. Guirassy kind of had the upper hand on him during that game. But for Dortmund, Niko Kovac's football has become effective at winning games. But it's also quite boring at the time as well, because there's nothing flashy. What Dortmund had previously done is not fun, it's not exciting. And granted, it's working for Dortmund, but which we'll get onto this later. The Bundesliga is basically over already. So playing like this in the Bundesliga, yeah, you'll put the ceiling at the moment is second. And that's not really an achievement at the end of the day for Dortmund, because they should be in Champions League places all the time. So it was a bit of a boring performance from them. Granted, if we look at previous Dortmund sides that were a bit more fun and they played more attractive football, the slight difference was, they had Erling Haaland, Marco Reus, Jadon Sancho, players like that who kind of brought this spark to the team. But whereas this Dortmund side, there's not really anyone like that. They're all kind of workhorses in their own right, and that goes kind of hand in hand with how I've said previously. Dortmund kind of need a more creative player, to do something for them, because I think at times this play style can be quite restrictive in what they're actually able to achieve. But for Augsburg, obviously it was a better performance from them, but they still lost. We'll keep Sandro Wagner for now. On Saturday afternoon, the standout game here was RB Leipzig versus Stuttgart. It finished Leipzig 3, Stuttgart 1. This was another challenge for Leipzig since they lost to Bayern on the opening day. The other was against Dortmund, which they drew 1-1. But this one, they won and they kind of passed the challenge. They showed the quality that they have again, especially because this was quite a tight game, quite a bit. Hassani Udrego was again quite standout. He's definitely flourishing under Ole Werner, and is really, in this game, he was really making a name for himself as a box-to-box midfielder. And Jan Diomande as well, he was a standout in this game as well. His cross forced the own goal, and then he scored himself as well. And so that's 2 back-to-back games now where he's impressed. 20 million was a lot of money for him in the summer. An 18-year-old, he was playing for Leganés in La Liga and didn't really have a lot to show for it. But in the early stages of the season, it does kind of look like it may pay off. But Stuttgart were kind of their own worst enemy here. They've been progressing and moving in an upwards direction, in the games before this, and this was their first proper challenge as well. And they kind of shot themselves in the foot. The own goal, there's not really a lot you can do about it. But the second one you can do, and that was a mistake from Alexander Nubel, who was being pressed by Romulo, tried to dummy him, didn't pull the dummy off properly, and the ball kind of went away from him straight in the path of Romulo, who was able to make it 3-1. And in the early stages of the season, Nubel was not really that, you didn't get assurance from having Nubel in goal. And he has had good performances since then, but again, it's these flashes of mistakes that he makes, and you're thinking, okay. The way things are going, the only reason Nubel was in the German national team because Marc-Andre ter Stegen's injured, and Nagelsmann just chooses not to call up Noah Atebolu, because at the end of the day, like, Nubel isn't in the top 3 German goalkeepers. So luckily for Stuttgart is they've already started contingency planning, and Dennis Seaman, who's currently one of the better goalkeepers in the Zweite Bundesliga for Paderborn, will be the number 1 next season, and so that means Nubel will most likely leave Stuttgart, and he'll have to find a home elsewhere because Bayern don't want him either, because they've already replaced him. The Manuel Neuer replacement has been replaced by the next Manuel Neuer replacement because Manuel Neuer hasn't retired yet. So Nubel's kind of been like the unlucky one in this situation. Then the only other game that actually didn't finish as a draw in the Saturday afternoon games will surprise you, is finally Borussia Mönchengladbach have won a game in the Bundesliga. They beat St. Pauli 4-0. In midweek they beat Karlsruhe as well, and so they use that as like a jump pad for them to win their first Bundesliga game of the season. Between the 2 games, it was 7 months and 3 days between their first and second between the 2 Bundesliga wins. The last win came against RB Leipzig on March 29th, which actually cost Marco Rose his job. And the thing about this win, it was convincing as well. Gladbach were comfortably the better team. There were doubts, like for Haris Tabakovic when he joined. You know, could he replace Tim Kleindienst? And at the beginning, didn't really look that good. But since then, he's kind of hit a run of form and scored 5 goals so far. And he's kind of proven to be a decent option at the striker. And then obviously we need to talk about the Florian Neuhaus revival. He got an assist in this game, but his like overall all-round play was great. I mean, in this game, Tabakovic scored twice and assisted once. For his assist, it came from like a long ball from Neuhaus. But like Neuhaus was outcasted by Gerardo Seoane, and he was demoted, obviously after the Mallorca incident in the summer, he was demoted to the under-23s under Eugen Polanski, the current head coach. And under Polanski, he's been, who is now the head coach, is now like revived himself. And he obviously, I'm not saying he's back to his best because Neuhaus' best was 5 years ago nearly, but he's proved a good addition to this side and is seemingly justifying the 1, 2, 3, 4 million euros he's being paid. Whereas for St. Pauli, obviously they've really hit the wall in recent weeks. I mean, losing to a team that hasn't won a game all season yet isn't really the best of looks. And so after like the positive starts of the season, they've kind of struggled in recent games. And so now they kind of have to find a solution sooner rather than later because they have been sucked in to this fight in the bottom half of the table. Now, the rest of the games finished on Saturday afternoon, all finished in draws. So I think there's not a lot to write home about. So these will be listed off quite quickly. Union drew 0-0 with Freiburg. Both teams had goals disallowed, and both of them now find themselves quite solidly in mid-table. Freiburg they've drawn 4 of their last 5 games now, and the only game they have lost the game they did lose was against Leverkusen, and so they've kind of hit a wall. Union are just being Union Berlin. The next kind of like the relegation places have been shaken up because of Gladbach's win now and Augsburg's loss, because Heidenheim drew 1-1 with Frankfurt. Frankfurt have kind of been like inconsistent as of late. The injury to Can Uzun didn't help. There was nearly a comical own goal winner from Heidenheim when they had a shot that hit the crossbar, bounced off Mika Zetter's back and then went into the net, but they were able, like it was offside, so Frankfurt were lucky. But Heidenheim showed fight to go toe-to-toe with this Frankfurt side and nearly win the game. While the other draw was Mainz versus Bremen, which also ended 1-1. Mainz are still like struggling to win a game. They should have actually won this game, but they were unable to get it off. And so this allowed Bremen to have a late revival and score in the 85th minute. So what this does mean is like we do have a bit of like a scrappy relegation fight on our hands now. It goes from 12th to 18th. There's only 3 points separating them. Wolfsburg and Hamburg, who we're going to get on to, are on 8 points. Augsburg on 7. St. Pauli also on 7. Gladbach are now not bottom anymore and have risen to 16th with 6 points. Mainz are on 5. in 17th, and Heidenheim are also on 5 below last. There's a lot of teams in here you wouldn't expect them to be here, like Mainz, Gladbach, Wolfsburg, for example, but they've all kind of been sucked in. We're now 25% of the way through the season, and I think it's fair to start judging stuff. And so, as things currently stand, this relegation fight will prove to be quite scrappy, and it will really be like who can be less shit to not get relegated. The standout game this weekend was Bayern versus Leverkusen. Both were heading into this game on win streaks. Bayern 14 games winning in a row in all competitions. Leverkusen have been unbeaten since Kasper Heumann took charge. However, in midweek, Bayern played PSG, so there was quite heavy rotation. As you're thinking, okay, maybe Leverkusen have a chance here. Absolutely not. It ended 3-0 to Bayern. Serge Gnabry scored, so did Nicholas Jackson, and there was an own goal from Loic Bade. Bayern were dominant in this game. Leverkusen, apart from like the initial 20 minutes, never really had a chance. Well, they didn't really have a proper chance of goal at all, but like for the first 20 minutes, they did kind of look maybe they're attempting to take the game to Bayern. But after that, they just kind of collapsed, and it allowed Bayern to just take control of the game, and Leverkusen never really challenged them. Bayern are now 5 points clear of Leipzig, but I think it's safe to say that the title race is more than likely over, and we've only just begun November. I'll address this later in the week, but is it good for the league? No. Granted, the Bundesliga is still competitive if you don't base it on who wins titles. Like with everything else, I've literally just mentioned the relegation battle. But if you do base it solely on titles, then this really isn't a good look. You have one of the better teams in the league, one of the teams fighting for the top 5, and they lose, like quite comfortably as well. And if you want to grow the league internationally, having a standout game like this in a standout time, and if it to be that much of a walkover for Bayern, with a rotated side as well. This wasn't Harry Kane, Luis Diaz and Michael Olise. This was Lennart Carl, Nicholas Jackson, Serge Gnabry, and they were completely outplayed. So it's currently not really a good look for the Bundesliga as a whole. Obviously, it also just goes to show how good Bayern actually are. Like for Leverkusen, this was 2 steps forward, 1 step back in this game. Like they started off so well under Heumann, and it's kind of all came undone a bit. I mean, after the game, Edmund Tapsoba said, game management was a bit of a problem. You could kind of say that was the truth, because he basically just collapsed as soon as Bayern scored. As I said, we're 25% of the way through the season, and I think you can say with most 80% confidence that the title race is over. The only thing that could potentially happen is the fatigue. Like the Club World Cup has so far worked out for Bayern. Like it acted as quite an intense pre-season, so they're coming into this in like prime form at the start of the season. Coming into this in prime form means that you'll probably fatigue earlier on. So the only way that you could say, okay, maybe there's still a chance in the title race is if Bayern hit like February time and they just hit a wall in terms of fatigue, and they just fall, and their form falls off a cliff. Because obviously there's the World Cup next summer as well, and like some players may have the back in their mind, okay, I want to go to the World Cup, so I want to be fit and ready for that. And I don't want to like blow a gasket halfway through this season, because then I'll be too tired for the World Cup. So as things stand right now, there's no like real thing that you can look at and go, you know what, that's going to stop Bayern from winning. On Sunday, Cologne beat Hamburg 4-1 in a battle between the newly promoted sides. It's safe to say that Cologne are the surprise of the season so far. With the way they're going, there's a good chance they could qualify for the Conference League. I mean, the teams that they have played, they still haven't beaten a decent team. Granted, they nearly beat Dortmund if they didn't concede late on, but they haven't beaten a good team yet. Stuttgart they lost, Dortmund they lost. I think they played Leverkusen or Leipzig, then they lost that as well. I mean, granted they've beaten the teams who will most likely be around them, and they'll have to beat eventually. But like, if they want to step further than the Conference League, they need to stop beating bigger teams, and so far they haven't even come close to doing that. So, are Cologne potentially flat track bullies? Sure. But for Hamburg, they did, like the scoreline, like Cologne obviously deserve to win this, but the scoreline is kind of skewed, because 2 of Cologne's goals came in the added time, and Hamburg basically collapsed and they had 2 players sent off for a second yellow card. So with Hamburg trying to score an equaliser when it was 2-1, that obviously left a lot of space. despite them being down to 9 men, and that allowed Cologne to score twice as well. But again, as I said with Hamburg, I think they'll do enough to be safe. Granted, they have been sucked in because they've lost 3 games in a row and they play Dortmund next, but they should be okay. Finally, it was Wolfsburg against Hoffenheim. Hoffenheim won this 3-2. Could it be the end for Paul Simonis? Probably not, because Wolfsburg actually had a better performance in this game. Oliver Baumann made several key saves for Hoffenheim to keep them in the lead and keep them in the game. And so I think that would give Simonis a brief stay of execution. But as I said, like, Mohamed Amoura is really that meme where it's the Ferrari or Bugatti, or whatever car it is in that like rundown house. Adam Dagim looks a decent player as well, but like in this faltering Wolfsburg side so far, Amoura is by far their best player. And to be fair, like if a club came in January for Amoura and was like, okay, here's this much money, I think Wolfsburg would be stupid not to turn it down, because then they have more money to waste on more players that are going to underperform, because that's what Wolfsburg do. And so the Bundesliga table, as I said, Bayern are top, 100% record still, 27 points. Leipzig are second on 22 points. Dortmund are third on 20 points. Stuttgart are fourth on 18. Bayer Leverkusen are fifth on 17, and Hoffenheim are sixth on 16. And then, as I mentioned, the relegation zone is a lot cramper. It's still Heidenheim last, Mainz, and then Gladbach. And so the games next week are, the standout one is the Rhine Derby. It's back again after a year away. It's Borussia Mönchengladbach versus Cologne. Gladbach have hit form at the right time here to potentially beat Cologne, so that's happening at Borussia Park. The other standout game actually is Hamburg versus Dortmund. And then Bayern travel to Berlin to play Union Berlin. Leverkusen play Heidenheim. Stuttgart are against Augsburg, and to round off the weekend, Frankfurt play Mainz. But as I said, like, teams are in European action in midweek. The standout is Bayern Munich versus PSG. This is potentially, it's the 2 teams leading the league phase at the moment, but it's potentially also the 2 best teams in Europe. And so this will be Bayern's challenge to see whether they are one of the better teams in Europe. Napoli play Eintracht Frankfurt, and then on Wednesday the standout game for the German side is Manchester City versus Borussia Dortmund, while Bayer Leverkusen travel to Benfica. In the Europa League, Freiburg travel to the south of France to play Nice, while Stuttgart host Feyenoord. And then in the Conference League, Mainz play Fiorentina, which, considering Fiorentina have made the Conference League final several times, like, it's going to be a difficult side for this Mainz side, who are already struggling. So let me know what you think about this match day. Is Bayern winning bad for the league? Is this good? Is this bad? Is Dortmund boring? What other takeaways do you have?